Hello and welcome to this talk based on the Bible reading for February 14th, 2021. I'm Roberta Topham and I am a minister at Christ Church in Ilkley. The Bible passage for Sunday the 14th of February came from Mark chapter 9 verses 2 to 9. And in that passage we hear how Jesus takes three of his disciples and they go up a mountain to pray. And while they're on the mountaintop, Jesus becomes brightly lit up, and alongside him appear the ancient prophets of Moses and Elijah. And the disciples experience what we might, in modern day terms, call a wow moment. Now, I wonder when you last had a wow moment, something that's stopped you in your tracks, something beautiful that's made you think and wonder, maybe even something that has transformed your life. Now, at the moment, we may not have many opportunities for wow moments. Although where I am, it's a very beautiful part of the country. I'm very fortunate in that way. And it's often possible to stop and see something amazingly beautiful. I'm just going to share a photograph with you from the valley where I live. This is looking over towards Beamsley Beacon with some snow on the top. And a few days ago, there was a fantastic red sunset. The sky was very pink and the light was somehow reflected on the top of Beamsley Beacon, the top of the hill near us. Now, you may recall seeing some flash of colour around you, perhaps a goldfinch with the gold and the red, or even a little robin can bring a real uplift to a day. Perhaps you can remember something special on holiday, something that made you stop and go, wow. Now, this last week, many people in our country have been wondering when we'll ever be able to go on holiday again. With the current restrictions, we can't go very far. We are told not to start planning holidays yet, but we wonder when we'll be able to go somewhere different, a day trip, even to a restaurant or a cafe or to church for some of us, or to see our friends and family. That would make us go, wow. Those moments can be life-sustaining. They can give us the energy, re-energize us to do good things. They're not just about entertainment, they are about helping us to go on. And that was what the first followers of Jesus really needed. Now, if we read back a few verses before our Bible passage today in Mark chapter 9, we would hear how Jesus had just been explaining to his disciples that he was to suffer and to die. And Peter, of course, is shocked and horrified by this. Jesus goes on to explain to his disciples that he is going to suffer on the cross, and if they're going to follow him, they too must pick up their cross. They must be prepared to suffer. That wasn't at all what they were having in mind for Jesus. And of course, the cross was associated with criminality, with torture and suffering and death. And the followers of Jesus had to learn to understand what that meant, because it seemed so far from what they expected God's mission to be about. And so this passage, this account of Jesus being transformed, transfigured, as it's often called, before his disciples would have encouraged those around him then and those coming after him in the difficult days after the first Easter. That passage, those words, have encouraged followers of Jesus ever since. And we too need to be encouraged and transformed. When we look for a real holiday, a real wow, then we might find that help, that encouraging. But what is a real holiday and a real wow? Well, significantly, the word holiday comes from two older English words connected to German and other languages, two words, holy and day. For the original holidays were days to celebrate Christian festivals. So the original purpose of a holiday was to give time to pay attention to God. That, as our Bible story for today reveals, can be truly and deeply empowering. The kind of wow moment in our passage goes beyond entertainment. It's an event with a real transforming effect. So we might like to ask ourselves, how can we experience such empowering wow moments for ourselves? Well, I think from this Bible passage, there are 3 top tips from Jesus. And the first is, be intentional. The second is, be in the moment in a positive way. And the third is, know when it's time to refocus and get on with the work, with the tasks. So first of all, Jesus was intentional about taking time out. He took the disciples up the mountain and they were alone with time for prayer. They were looking for God and they found God. Putting aside time to look deeply and carefully does reward us. So that's the first top tip. Let's put it in our diaries. Let's set the time aside intentionally. The second then is to be in those moments in a positive way. Now in the story we're told that Moses and Elijah appeared and Jesus was talking with them. The first hearers of the story would have known that this was code for saying Jesus was in the Premier Holy League. He was up there with those greats, those holy men of Jewish tradition. Jesus was extra special. Now, in the account, when those figures appear, we're told that Peter becomes very excited, terrified, and he says, well, let's make some tents, some booths, so that we can stay here longer. He perhaps was thinking it was like the festival of booths when the Jewish people remembered being in the wilderness, and that festival lasted for 7 days. But he wanted to get on with doing something. But of course, that wasn't what was to happen. Jesus was in the moment. And it's good to stay in the moment. Now, I must admit that sometimes when I'm trying to pray or when I'm in a service and another preacher starts, I can get a bit distracted. The shopping list might come into my mind. And maybe for you, it's some other task, something you'd like to make or do. Well, those who are good at being in the moment say, just notice those thoughts or ideas, perhaps have a piece of paper to jot them down on. And when you've done, you know you'll come back to them later and then refocus again on the prayer or on the thought or the book or the Bible passage that is time to look at. Now, for some of us, sometimes if it's a Bible passage that we find difficult, or a preacher maybe who doesn't speak in a way that we find particularly easy or accessible, it's easy to start being negative and think, oh, I'm not going to get much out of this. Well, I remember years ago when I was doing my research for my PhD, I was asked to speak in my college, which happened to be a postgraduate college in Cambridge. And I knew that lots of the fellows, the academics, were going to be at this presentation I had to give. And I was absolutely terrified, I have to admit. And my husband, John, who was then working in a department, he was lecturing in Cambridge, he said, don't worry, When we have a young student or a new student giving a talk in our department, the staff, the academics, go out of their way to find something, even in the newest and rawest and thinnest of presentations. Because when we have something in our heads and in our hearts, we're able to find something good most of the time when someone else is talking, if we only pay attention and are positive. So that's the second thing to take from our Bible passage on Jesus. Jesus is in the moment. And when we are too positively in the moment, we will always find something good. And then the third top tip, well, that's knowing when the moment is to come to an end and when we need to get on with the next part. And back with Peter, as I said, he wanted to build a tent or a booth for Elijah and Moses and Jesus, for them all to stay in the moment. But of course, the moment was to pass, and Jesus knows when that time has come and takes the disciples back down the mountain. And if we read on the next few verses, we would discover that back down the mountain, those disciples who have stayed there haven't been able to help a very sick boy. But Jesus can go and can help bring about the healing of that boy. And Jesus's disciples who experienced the rest of his life, his death, and the resurrection power of Easter, they were transformed and could then help other people. They could go on to share as Jesus had done in positive action. Today, our focus is on the first part of the two movements, if you like, of following Jesus. One part is being in the moment in prayer, resting in God, focusing on God, being transformed by God and energized. And then the second part is, if you like, coming down from the mountain and helping, being enabled to help those around us and help ourselves, to help to make good things happen. The time will come when we can go further out of our homes. We can go on holiday again. The time will come when we'll be able to go to a cafe or a restaurant and meet friends and family. And perhaps we will experience again more spectacular wow moments. But whether we are at home and in our own locality, or whether we can travel away, what will we look for? Will we just look for entertainment? Or will we be open to a wow that really transforms us and energizes, a deeper wow? Lent, the season of Lent and the lead up to Easter is nearly upon us. Might there be some steps we could take in this season, each day, every Sunday, or a particular time in the week, to pay attention to God, a holy day, and so be rewarded by the uplift of a real deep wow moment? Jesus used to go up mountains and pray. What will help you and me to sustain a life of love in action? Thank you for listening to this talk.